Part 3, Murder in Paradise, the unsolved murder of Sir Harry Oakes. Hello, I'm Jay Nickel Investigations, and this is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast, and World True Crime Thursdays. It was a crime that stunned the world, a murder in paradise, dripping in wealth, scandal, and corruption at the highest levels. A multimillionaire brutally bludgeoned in his own bed, his body doused in gasoline, set ablaze in a desperate attempt to destroy the evidence. But instead of justice, what followed was one of the greatest cover-ups of the 20th century. If you're just tuning in, this is part 3 of our deep dive into the murder of Sir Harry Oakes, Canada's richest prospector-turned-tax exile, whose gruesome death in 1943 remains unsolved to this day. In part 1, we explored Oakes' rises to fame, his powerful enemies, the night of his shocking murder in Nassau, Bahamas. The crime scene was horrifying, but even more chilling was what would happen next. In part 2, The Duke's Shadow, we uncovered the royal interference that derailed the case. Instead of letting the Bahamian police investigate, the island's governor, the Duke of Windsor, formerly King Edward VIII, took matters into his own hands. Within hours, he bypassed local authorities and brought in 2 questionable detectives from Miami, who wasted no time pinning the murder on a convenient suspect, Alfred de Marigny, Oakes' son-in-law. Their key evidence? A single, perfect fingerprint, later exposed as a fraudulent plant. De Marigny was acquitted, but instead of pursuing new leads, authorities shut down the investigation. No one else was ever charged. Which brings us here to part 3, Murder in Paradise, the unsolved murder of Sir Harry Oakes. What happened to the missing evidence? Why did the Duke of Windsor flee Nassau before the trial ended? And most importantly, who really killed Sir Harry Oakes? Today we uncover the cover-up, the suppressed leads, and the most compelling modern theories that could finally reveal the truth. Let's dive in. Hello, I'm Jay Nickel Investigations, and this is Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Ontario Cold Cases is a gripping true crime podcast that shines a light on unsolved murders, disappearances, and forgotten crimes from across the province and the world. With meticulous research, compelling storytelling, and a commitment to historical accuracy, we bring you the real stories of victims, investigators, and suspects, stories that demand to be heard. Each week, we take you deep into the world of true crime with a packed schedule of episodes. Tuesdays, historical true crime cases, exploring infamous and obscure crimes from history. Wednesdays, the Mick and Mac Mysteries, a thrilling fictional detective series set in 1950s Toronto. Thursdays, World Cold Case Thursday, investigating unsolved cases from around the globe. Sundays, Ontario Cold Cases, the latest episode uncovering an unsolved mystery from Ontario. From high-profile crimes that shock the nation to little-known cases waiting for justice, we uncover the truth, one case at a time. Join us as we explore the dark corners of history and mystery, where every clue could lead to answers and every case deserves a second look. Subscribe now wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts and never miss an episode of Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Segment 1, The Investigation's Failures. What went missing? From the moment Sir Harry Oakes' body was discovered, the case was doomed. Not because there wasn't enough evidence, because too much of it vanished, was mishandled, or was straight up ignored. If someone had set out to sabotage this investigation from the start, they couldn't have done a better job. Number 1, the crime scene lockdown and the wrong men in charge. Let's get one thing straight. The Bahamian police were fully capable of handling the case. They were on the scene almost immediately, ready to gather evidence, document every detail, and do their jobs. And then they were shut out. Enter Edward Melchin and James Otto Barker, two detectives flown in from Miami, at the personal request of the Duke of Windsor. They took control immediately, blocked off the crime scene, refused to let local officers conduct a proper forensic analysis. Why? What were they trying to hide? Letting outsiders control the investigation crippled the case before it even began. Number 2, the murder weapon. Now you see it, now you don't. A key piece of evidence, the murder weapon itself, was spotted at the crime scene. Then it was gone. Early reports describe investigators noting a heavy, blood-stained object near Oakes' body. It was believed to be the weapon that ended his life. And yet within hours, it vanished. No murder weapon was ever officially entered into evidence. Where did it go? Who took it? And more importantly, why? Number 3, the fire that wasn't a botched cover-up. The killer or killers clearly tried to burn Oakes' body. But if the goal was to destroy evidence, they failed spectacularly. Here's what forensic experts should have analyzed but never did. The gasoline was poured unevenly, soaking some areas while leaving others completely untouched. The mattress burned, but the flames never fully spread, suggesting hesitation, panic, or just sheer incompetence. If a proper forensic team had been allowed to analyze burn patterns, accelerant traces, and fire dynamics, they could have uncovered clues about how the crime actually unfolded. Instead, thanks to the Miami detectives' interference, these crucial details were ignored. Was the killer in a rush? Were they interrupted? Or was the fire just a staged distraction? Number 4, the most blatant frame-up in crime history. And then there was the fingerprint. Melchin and Barker claimed they had found Alfred de Marigny's fingerprint on a screen in Oakes' bedroom. Case closed, right? Not so fast. Because when forensic experts examined the print during the trial, they found some glaring problems. The fingerprint was too perfect. Real fingerprints left at the crime scene aren't pristine. This one was almost as if someone had placed it there. De Marigny had only touched one thing at the police station, a pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes. That same pack of cigarettes mysteriously vanished after his arrest. Conclusion? The Miami detectives had lifted de Marigny's print from the cigarette pack, transferred it to the crime scene. A classic frame job. And when this so-called evidence collapsed in court, the entire case against de Marigny fell apart. So what really happened? Think about it. The crime scene was sealed off by foreign detectives who had no business leading the case. Key piece of evidence, the murder weapon, disappeared into thin air. The fire that was meant to destroy evidence barely did its job. The fingerprint was clearly planted to frame an innocent man. Who had the power to manipulate the investigation this badly? Who needed this case buried so quickly? And most importantly, who really killed Sir Harry Oakes? Because whoever it was, they got away with it. Up next, Segment 2, the cover-up, the Duke's role in burying the case. Segment 2, the cover-up, the Duke's role in burying the case. The deeper you look into this case, the clearer it becomes that this wasn't just a simple murder. It was a crime that someone wanted buried, fast. The man most responsible for the cover-up was none other than the Duke of Windsor, formerly King Edward VIII. Consider his actions. He immediately bypassed local Bahamian police and ordered American detectives to take over, men with no prior connection to Nassau's legal system. He held a secret, unwitnessed 20-minute meeting with the Miami detectives right before they arrested de Marigny. He fled the Bahamas before the trial, avoiding scrutiny. And most telling of all, the case was shut down after de Marigny was acquitted. No new suspects were ever pursued. Why would the Duke of Windsor want this case buried? Here are a few possibilities. Financial entanglements. Oakes was reportedly preparing to move his fortune to Mexico, withdrawing it from the Bahamas. This would have financially crippled some of the island's most powerful figures, including Christie, possibly even the Duke. Political blackmail. Oakes was known to fund political movements in Nassau, some of which were at odds with the white business elite. Was he making enemies who wanted him gone? The Nazi connection. The Duke had a history of Nazi sympathies. Was there a link between Oakes' murder and wartime intelligence operations? Whatever the reason, the Duke of Windsor did everything in his power to ensure this case was never solved. Segment 3. Theories and Investigations. Who really killed Sir Harry Oakes? For nearly 80 years, Sir Harry Oakes' murders remain one of the greatest unsolved crimes in modern history. The official inquiry was tainted from the start. The trial a farce, and the real culprit, whoever they were, walked free. As we investigate the possible killers, we're going to draw from decades of research books, FBI files, and first-hand testimonies to build the most comprehensive breakdown of what really happened. Theory number 1. Harold Christie, the business partner with everything to lose. Who was Harold Christie? Harold G. Christie was a Bahamian real estate tycoon, politician, one of Nassau's most powerful businessmen. He lured Oakes to the Bahamas, promising tax-free wealth and lucrative land deals. He borrowed huge sums of money from Oakes, much of which he could never repay. He was deeply involved in corrupt land dealings, including a controversial military airfield sale that Oakes was beginning to question. A key detail: Oakes was considering moving his fortune to Mexico, potentially collapsing the Bahamian economy. Christie and many others couldn't afford to let that happen. The suspicious alibi. On the night of the murder, Christie was staying at Oakes' house, supposedly asleep just 2 doors away from the crime scene. But Nassau police testified they saw Christie driving around in his station wagon at 3 a.m., contradicting his claim that he never left the house. If Christie was out that night, where did he go? And why lie? Harold Christie's alleged confession. Years later, Christie privately admitted to friends that he was directly involved in the murder of Sir Harry Oakes. His testimony at de Marigny's trial was seen as unconvincing and contradictory. He was later knighted for his contributions to the Bahamas, despite suspicion lingering over his role in the case. The verdict. Did Christie kill Oakes himself, or did he facilitate the crime for someone else? Theory number 2. The Mafia hit. Meyer Lansky's silent hand. Could Sir Harry Oakes have been murdered by the mob? In 1972, former FBI agent and lawyer Marshall Hoots produced King's 10, later reissued as Who Killed Sir Harry Oakes, in which he argued that the American Mafia, specifically Meyer Lansky, was behind the killing. The Gambling War. Lansky and other organized crime figures wanted to turn Nassau into a gambling empire, just like they had done in Cuba. Lansky had already secured the approval of the Duke of Windsor to build casinos in the Bahamas. Oakes had initially supported the project, but changed his mind and refused to go along with it. His opposition threatened the entire plan. Hoots suggested that Lansky sent henchmen from Miami to Nassau to pressure Oakes into compliance. The intimidation escalated, and Oakes was killed. the Miami connection and a staged crime scene. Hoots alleged Oakes had been murdered on a powerboat off the coast of Nassau during a late-night meeting with Christie. Christie, working with the mob, helped cover up the real crime scene by staging a murder at Oakes' house. The Miami police detectives, who were suspected of being on Lansky's payroll, framed Demarini to protect the real killers. Further evidence of a mob connection. Method of murder. Bludgeoning and a staged fire fits known mafia intimidation tactics. The Duke's interference in the investigation suggests he may have been protecting Lansky's interests. After the trial, some of Lansky's henchmen who had traveled to Nassau disappeared. Houts claimed Lansky himself dealt with them for botching the job. If Lansky had the Duke of Windsor's protection, would anyone dare pursue the truth? Theory number 3, a political assassination, the Nazi connection. Was Oakes killed because he discovered a secret that could have brought down powerful figures? The Duke of Windsor's disturbing Nazi ties. Edward VIII, who had abdicated the British throne in 1936, had a well-documented history of Nazi sympathies. The FBI and British intelligence suspected him of leaking military secrets to Germany. He had met with Hitler personally in 1937. Wallis Simpson, the Duchess of Windsor, was allegedly passing information to the Nazis through a secret courier system. Was Oakes silenced to protect wartime secrets? The Axel Wenner-Gren connection. Oakes had business ties with Axel Wenner-Gren, a Swedish millionaire and suspected Nazi financier. Wenner-Gren was a close friend of Hermann Göring, Hitler's right-hand man. Oakes may have learned about secret financial transactions between the Duke, Wenner-Gren, and Nazi-controlled funds. If Oakes was planning to report this, was he eliminated before he could talk? Why did the Duke block Scotland Yard from investigating the case? Theory number 4, a ritualistic murder, African magic, and secret societies. Historian Philip Higham proposed that Oakes was killed by a ritual specialist from South Florida hired by Harold Christie. The bizarre crime scene, feathers scattered over Oakes' body, suggests ritual elements. Higham believed Christie hired a Haitian or Bahamian voodoo practitioner to carry out the killing. The fire was not meant to destroy evidence, but to serve as a cleansing ritual. Could Oakes' murder have been linked to an occult practice used to intimidate the powerful? Theory number 5, the missing millions and the Mexico connection. Andrew Lowney's recent research uncovered a financial trail that may explain everything. Oakes had quietly transferred $15 million to Mexico for his murder. Lowney claims this money was later split between 3 people: the Duke of Windsor, Harold Christie, and a high-ranking Mexican banker. Did Christie arrange Oakes' murder to prevent further financial losses? Did the Duke cover up the crime because he was implicated in illegal money transfers? So, final verdict: who killed Sir Harry Oakes? For nearly 80 years, the murder of Sir Harry Oakes has remained one of the greatest unsolved crimes of the 20th century. What began as a shocking, gruesome homicide quickly turned into a tangled web of corruption, conspiracy, and cover-ups, one that reached the highest levels of power, from organized crime to the exiled Duke of Windsor himself. So after all this, what do we believe? Each theory has compelling evidence, but some stand out more than others. The Harold Christie theory. He had the motive, opportunity, and later confessed to his involvement. The Mafia theory. Lansky had a clear financial incentive and control over corrupt police. The political assassination. Was his murder a political assassination? silencing him before he could expose Nancy-linked financial transaction. The Mexico connection. Missing millions could explain the Duke's interference. The Duke of Windsor orchestrated the cover-up to protect his own secrets, ensuring the truth would never see the light of day. The real answer is likely a combination of all of them. One thing is clear, whoever killed Sir Oakes got away with it. The investigation was a sham from the moment it began. Key evidence vanished, the murder weapon disappeared, fingerprint was blatantly planted to frame an innocent man. When that frame-up collapsed, the entire case was buried forever. Yet even today the clues remain, hidden in old reports buried in archives, whispered among those who knew more than they were willing to say. So who do you think was responsible? Do you believe the mafia had him killed? Did Harry Christie set him up? Was the Duke of Windsor more involved than history admits? We want to hear from you. Join the conversation by leaving a comment, sharing your theories, and discussing the case with fellow true crime enthusiasts. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast, so you never miss an episode. We're available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to rate and review the show. Your support helps us bring more of Canada's most chilling, forgotten, and mysterious cases to life. And don't forget, every case is cold until someone decides to open it again. I'm Jay Nickel, and this has been Ontario Cold Cases, Canada's True Crime Podcast. Join us next week as we dive into another unsolved case, one that might just change everything you thought you knew. Stay safe, stay curious, and keep questioning. Until next time.